Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Thirsty Thursday live stream. So, in tonight's episode, we have an awesome guest. We have a lot of cool stuff to cover, and hopefully, everyone's having an awesome week and happy Thursday. And pass the baton to you, Evan. You can go ahead and take it. And who are you? What have you been up to? And for those folks that haven't heard of you, give a little breakdown.
Thank you for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it. The last time I was here, you may remember, if any of you who are viewing this were on, I now have somewhat of a background. Currently using my GPU as a background because I got yelled at for having a ping pong table in the back. So that's no longer the case anymore. We somewhat resolved that issue. My name is Evan Isaac. I am an application security consultant at a firm, a cybersecurity firm. I do mainly application security, so web apps, APIs. I'm currently learning mobile security as well as SDLC, but I also do a little bit of network pen testing on the side here and there, basically on Try Hack Me and Hack the Box. I have my OSCP, EJPT, ECPPT, and various other certifications that we'll probably go into later in this podcast. Additionally, on my free time, I have a company called Emory Security where I give out free education to people like you, as well as do CV hunting for people who want to learn and grow within security for developers of false applications, so free open source software on GitHub.
Nice. Awesome. That is cool. And yeah, that's awesome. So like for those folks like that, probably a lot of my viewers, maybe not, like probably not so much on the application security because I don't really cover too much AppSec stuff, right? So for those folks that are like, maybe like, okay, they're going to feed off this and, pick on your brain. How can they get into the world of like AppSec to, API pen test? And you said you're learning mobile, but like from the top down, everyone always says a traditional, like, oh, learn the OWASP top 10, go on Port Swigger, go on Hack the Box, try Hack Me's. But like, is there anything else that, maybe some people are missing that, that helped you versus what you see in the traditional Google searching?
I think the biggest thing is to just go out there and do it. I know that a lot of people are a little bit scared of bug bounty. I've always been a bit nervous about bug bounty. It's that gray area, whether or not you want to hack into real world applications or you may not want to. I did that for just a little bit. I worked on a lot of government agencies, ended up finding a few vulnerabilities, but then I took down one of the websites, and it ended up being a race condition vulnerability that I found. But at the time, I thought that I took it down. So after that jump scare, I realized to myself that maybe it's not the best idea to go into bug bounty. But if you do want to learn about web application security, I strongly encourage you to do false application testing. Again, that's free open source software. And essentially all you have to do, you go onto GitHub, you search up for content management systems or CRMs, anything that is a management system. You download it locally onto your machine and you just start hacking away. And essentially what that'll do is that'll build confidence to assist with either learning the vulnerabilities, but also understanding how the code works and how to remediate the vulnerabilities within the code. So that's how I started out in web application security. Again, I was first a network pen tester. I did not start out in web app security, was never good at web apps. I actually hated Burp Suite. Whenever I saw that there was a box having to do a Burp Suite, I shut it off and I moved on to the next one.
That's what I do.
But that's every pen tester when they first start out. They're like, oh, I'm not gonna even bother with this. But over time, as I started to learn more and more about the web app community and what they have to offer, I realized Burp Suite A wasn't that bad, and B, it gave me a new skill set to really advance in. And I ended up becoming a senior application security consultant because of that.
Nice. So, everyone knows Burp Suite. Hey, what is that other one? It starts with a C.
Caudio.
Yeah.
Caido.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it.
Have you used that?
No, I haven't.
So you just stay with the Burp Suite.
I've used Burp. I mean, I use Burp every day. Burp Professional is what I use. But there is Zap, the OS app, which is also a pretty good tool. I've used that a few times. So that gives off a brand new perspective of how you can proxy specific things. So it'll do vuln scans as you begin requests and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. But the industry standard is still Burp Suite Pro.
Yeah. This fucking hair. That's good to know. And because I remember like doing some web app stuff. Like when it was like WordPress, I'm like, okay, WordPress, I can do WP scan, I can do check for themes and outdated plugins and all this jazzy jazz, and see what I can do, and just go to website.com/wp admin, try to log in and see if there's a valid user, admin, and there's admin password's not, like, and I've tested some and got in, and I didn't have to use Burp Suite, right? So there
Yeah.
was, there's definitely some, because I try to avoid it as much as I can, to be honest. But I,
A lot of people say that.
yeah, there, yeah, it's funny, it's interesting. So as far as like, so application security, what exactly is like AppSec for those folks that don't know? Like, is it different? Like, okay, I'm an AppSec engineer versus a web app tester. Is it different?
How I see application security could be different from other people. So my answer would be application security engineer is the one assisting the developers in mitigating any factors, right, that occur from a pen test. Whereas a web app pen tester, an API pen tester, they're going to go in, they're going to find the vulnerabilities, they're going to give remediation steps to remediate those vulnerabilities, but they're not going to go into the code itself and remediate those vulnerabilities. AppSec is a pretty broad subject in a sense that it's not only web application security, but it's also mobile security,
Mhm.
understanding how mobile works, Android and iOS, as well as thick client, so desktop apps, and understanding how data is transmitted between desktop apps.
Cool. Yeah. And I think that's super informative, right? For those folks that are really, really looking to dive in. So, you were in the game already, and then you decided to do a certification called the OSCP, right? You did like the INE cert, and I think that's the last time when you were on, you didn't do your OSCP first, and we would chat offline and like, I told you would always ace it. So like for those folks, or like for yourself, like what was the OSCP like compared to what the media says it is? Like everyone amps this thing up like it's fucking God.
First thing I'll say is my opinion is my own and it has nothing to do with my employer
Yeah.
because my opinion is extremely controversial compared to the norm. I do not like the OSCP. I've
Hmm.
always thought that the OSCP is a bit of a scam because you have to pay $1,700 for this certification that really holds a lot of weight in the industry, but is it really worth the $1,700? There's a lot of alternatives out there like the PNPT, the PJPT, EJPT, ECPPT, all these different certifications that are so much cheaper than the OSCP.
Hmm.
Yet we still value the OSCP as, like you said, God. Now, Hack the Box has a fantastic certification, which
Hmm.
you've taken, the
Hmm.
CPTS.
Hmm.
And I feel from just the course material, I've yet to take the certification, but from what I've seen and heard from other people, that seems to be more valuable when it comes to the education side of things than the OSCP. When I took the OSCP, there was a lot of issues with it. Number one, the exercises you have to make for bonus. The exercises took about 45 seconds for each lab to process and spawn. There were about, let's say, 100 or 200 or so, um, you know, exercises. And the issue with that is that you're wasting a lot of people's time by having these boxes spin up. You have to wait for them, and now you can proceed.
Hmm.
Instead, they should have just one exercise for that specific module with all the different kinds of, let's say, web app vulnerabilities in it, instead of having to spawn every single time. So that really annoyed me a little bit. Second
Hmm.
thing that annoyed me was during my exam, one of the exploits that I did was stressed out. So, for instance, what I mean by that is whenever I tried to exploit this specific vulnerability, it just wasn't working. And I messaged them. I'm like, hey guys, like this is the like I've exploited this vulnerability before. I know this is the pathway. And what they did was they took away some of my retakes, they tested it by themselves, and then they rebooted the machine. They told me that the exploit was working on their end, but it wasn't working on mine. And I was like, I will show you step by step of what I'm doing because I know it's correct.
Hmm.
Anyway, fast forward about 5 or 6 hours later, and the exact same exploit that I was working on worked after rebooting like 5 times. So, in the sense of stability, the OSCP still was not stable, which I've heard from other people, it was extremely stable for them. But for me, when I took it, it was not stable at all. Another downside for a $1,700 certification, you'd expect it to be top notch, top tier with the best education, the best labs, the best training, everything like that. I just I just did not think it was worth it.
No, fair. And I really like that because I love people's perspectives, right? And there was, for those folks that don't know, maybe they do. I don't think I ever said this live or on a video, but I'll mention it because we're talking about the OSCP. So when I first started out in offensive security or doing some offensive security stuff, this was in 2017. So in 2013, I got my CEH, CHFI, LPT and ECSA from EC Console, right? So I didn't know any. That's CEH was like the big honcho after I did my Security Plus, 14 years ago, right? So
Right.
I'm like, oh, I got the CEH. I'm a cool hacker. Not. So fast forward, like people was talking about this OSCP from offensive security, and this was in 2017. And like at least back then, I did a lot of Microsoft certs. I did a lot of Cisco certs, and sometimes you can get like a discount voucher from, like, for example, CompTIA. Oh, like do this or go through this course, or like the GCP, which is Google's Cybersecurity Professional. If you go through their course, you get like a 50% off of the Security Plus, right? So instead of being $300 or whatever it is now, it's 150, whatever. So someone reached out to me. I think the site was called certmasters.com or something like that. And they reached out to me. I think it was on LinkedIn. I don't remember. I don't recall exactly. Maybe it was, I don't remember. But they reached out to me and said, hey, I can give you this offensive security OSCP voucher for half price. It was like $700 or something like that. And I think now it's $1,700. But back then, before I think it was like only $1,400 or something like that. If I remember correctly. So what happened to me about my OSCP is I got scammed, right? So I went through this whole process of talking to someone, and I thought it was from offensive security. Like, I didn't know this company. You know what I mean? Like, I just knew that if I wanted to become a pen tester, people were talking about this and they were shitting on the CEH, right? I'm like, oh, I guess I need to do this. This is before CEH had their CEH Master, which is their hands-on aspect of the exam now. But make a long story short, it's not really a short story because I've been through fucking hell with them. But then, like, I went through this exam. It was 5 standalone machines. This is before they had Active Directory. You had buffer overflows and using immunity and all this other shit back then.
Yeah.
So I VPN'd in. You went through the exam. You have your pretty face. They run a script on your machine, make sure there's whatever the fuck they check for. I don't know. And so everything that all happened to me, right? That all happened to me. And I was doing my exam, and I did back then, the playground was all the VulnHub machines. I don't know how it is now, but all the VulnHub machines, and there was no Windows machines. Everything was Linux. So when I did this, I did their pretty report. I submitted to them, and I got a congratulations, whatever was it, KPL or whatever, their Kali Linux professional, whatever the hell that thing was.
Yeah.
And congratulations, you got your OSCP, blah, blah, blah. And here's your certificate, right? So it was like a PDF, which, remember, I didn't know if this was I'm like, okay, cool, I got this. And then I waited like 3 months. And I remember like telling my friend, he's like, oh, they're going to send you a pretty envelope with a card and your cert. And I was like, all right, no problem. I went to fucking not Walmart, Office Max, Office Depot, whatever back then. And just got a printout and threw it on my wall, right? I'm like, I'll wait for them to send it from Singapore or whatever the fuck it comes from, right? And fast forward, when I started making YouTube videos, remember, this was in 2018. I started making YouTube videos, I think, in 2020. During the pandemic. So I've been out of here for like 5 years now. And then someone reached out to me, said, your OffSec ID, or what is your OffSec ID? I was like, oh, it's back then it was something that was nothing to do with InfoSec Pat, because I didn't have InfoSec Pat back then. So they had me, like, they went through an investigation, said they didn't have me in the system. And I'm like, well, that's not on me, boo-boo. You know what I mean? Like, right. I paid someone.
It's not my problem.
Yeah. Like, I went through this thing, and they're like, this is I sent all the proof, all the emails, all the screenshots, everything this is what I did. Right. So they went through their investigation and they banned me. I'm like, you're banning me for something I have no control over. Like, if I knew that this was something like fraud or whatever, I would have never thrown that on the internet, like repping the shit. You know what I mean? Like, if I
Right.
wanted to keep that shit on the DL, I would have kept on the shit on the DL. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
now, fast forward, this was 7 years ago, and so that's why a lot of people ask me why I never went for this OSCP. I get that question a lot, and now it's out there, right? So that's why when I was like, okay, I want to start going into the offensive security game more, that's why I went for PJPT, PMPT, CPTS, CBBH. I went elsewhere from OffSec. So I never went to try to really fix that because I'm like, okay, like I hate to say this, but I have a little name in the game now, so I'm like, I don't really need that OSCP per se, right?
Right.
And so now, like, this is not right now, but I'm saying like now, like talking about like these days, like if I go look for a job, I don't need a job. I'm not looking for a job, but like OSCP is needed. So like, okay, now I need this OSCP, and now like a job's like, oh, why haven't you gotten it? And I go through this whole story, and now I'm like, okay, like how can I get this resolved? So that's why if anyone from OffSec, or if I reached out to anyone like like all those people that I reached out to, that's the reason. I want to try to get that resolved. So maybe one day I can take that exam just because it's needed, or maybe I'll get into a position that they'll fund me to get it. You know what I mean? But yeah,
Yeah.
that's my OffSec story.
Yeah,
Thanks
I
for
think
coming to my
it's a
TED
little bit
Talk.
I think it's a little bit unfortunate that we have to value this certification that a company can literally ban you for. If you're trying to get a new job and they say, well, we're not going to give you the job because of OSCP, I don't really think a certification should value your value. Like a certification should not be really the one to represent who you are. Now, if they give you a lab on top of the certification, maybe. Most companies are now moving toward that practical lab experience, right? Go
Mhm.
into our machines, break them, write a report, submit them. And if you like them, and if they like you with your report, they'll move you on to the next section.
Yep.
So, I think that's the true way companies should do it. I know that you have to base people off of their experience. And I think the OSCP may be a good way because it teaches you about time constraints, time management, and
Mhm.
how to write a report in a quick fashion.
Yep.
So if you have tons of vulnerabilities, you have to make sure that that reports within probably a day or two, depending on the company.
Yep.
In my case, I get it done within 8 hours. There's no reason to get it in any later. So
So I have a question. So when you do your reports, like while you're testing, are you like putting like your snippets in like Obsidian or Cherry Tree or whatever you're doing, or do you have like your report open? Or, obviously, I don't want to ask you if you use like PlexTrack or PwnDoc or whatever you're using, because that's we don't have to put that out there. But do you use whatever application you use? Do you just do it as you go, or like do you take your notes first and then throw that into your report to make it pretty?
So a mistake that I did when I first started out in pen testing is I waited to the last minute to write the report. And that
Mm.
kind of screwed me in the end because I forgot some of the vulnerabilities. I forgot how to do the vulnerabilities. I wrote notes about it, but I didn't know how to re-execute it.
Hmm.
And it kind of got to the point where I was confusing myself, which if I confuse myself, I'm totally confusing the client. So I had to take a step back and redo my entire pen test within a week's time. So in that sense, when I first started, don't do what I did because it sucks. But what I'll say is I always take notes. Whatever you do, get Obsidian, get OneNote, get even a notepad, whether it be Notepad plus plus or just straight up notepad. It doesn't really matter. Make sure you have notes. Document everything that you do. If you cannot reproduce your vulnerability, it didn't happen. You may
Hmm.
have a screenshot, but if you can't figure out a way to reproduce it so that way someone else can reproduce it to make sure that it's remediated, what good is the report?
Yeah.
The client at the end of the day is not paying for you to pen test their application, their network, whatever. They don't really care. What they value most is the report that you provide to them after the fact. You
Hmm.
can hack them all day. It doesn't really matter, right? That's the objective, is to hack into them. But their objective for your pen test is getting that report to them in a sufficient amount of time,
Hmm.
and B, figuring out ways to remediate it in as little time as possible. Developers don't want to wait. CEOs don't want to wait to secure their infrastructure. They want to do it right then and there. Now,
Hmm.
some people do it just for compliance, and that's a whole different story because it seems to be the issue with a lot of companies
Hmm.
nowadays is, hey, we just need this, we just need this compliance, and we're not going to fix any vulnerabilities. Some clients do that. Most clients do not. They're pretty good when it comes to trying to remediate vulnerabilities, but it's your job to have that person who's remediating the vulnerabilities go step by step with reproduction steps to perform the vulnerability, to perform the attack chain.
Yeah. No, that's oh, I didn't really say this in the beginning. So if anyone has any questions, throw it in the chat and we'll get to it. Usually like the last 15 minutes before 8 o'clock my time, like 15 to the top of the hour, 10 to the top of the hour. Then we'll go through the questions. I'm not forgetting about you. So,
Totally.
I just want to sprinkle a little bit just from, I think I know the answer, but obviously I want to ask. So someone that has their OSCP, does your job say, okay, like, don't stop there, especially like you're doing more web app, like, hey, do the OSWE or the OSEP, like just to get further knowledge about the, I don't know, the education, and like, okay, now we have an OSWE on staff. Evan's the main man. He's the web guy. He has this credential so he can validate. So it sells better to the client. Do you have to deal with that? And will you take that exam?
I don't, luckily, have to deal with that. My
Mm.
employer does not really care what I do on my off time. Now, we do have to do training. It's kind of, like a thing when it
Mhm.
comes to companies. Most companies want you to have goals set at the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
So, when I joined my brand new company, I was talked to about goals and we figured out a few goals to take.
Mhm.
So, one of my goals, for instance, is API security.
Mhm.
And there's a fantastic resource out there called API University. Some people may know about it.
Mhm.
They have fantastic free courses, and two of my objective is to get the CASA, so the CASA, which I don't know what it stands for, as well as the ASCP, or
P.
the API Security Certified Professional.
Yep.
So with those two certifications, it kind of solidifies my knowledge with the API security aspect, which is exactly what they want me to do.
Mhm.
Will I take OSWE? Probably in the future, just because I do want to learn more about white box pen testing, which is what that's mainly for. It's for source code
Source
review,
code. Yeah.
but it's not really a requirement. I think the biggest thing that you can do, like I said at the very beginning, is do hands-on practical experience.
Mhm.
That'll give you the boost, right? That'll give you the practice and the knowledge to solidify what you want to do as a pen tester. Like I said, I didn't know where I was going. The first 2 years of pen testing, I was kind of just throwing my hands up, praying that something would happen. And I started this false application CVE hunting, ended up landing 23 CVEs. And without that knowledge, there was no way that I'd be able to get into web app security. No,
Cool.
no, there's just no shot.
And then there's one more thing I want to touch on with the reports. So like a lot of people don't like reporting, and like where I was a little, I don't know if it's you or if it was another I don't remember, but like I was spoiled. Like we would take our screenshots and we had a writer to write our reports. There's
I
you know
wish.
yeah. So like, and it's funny
Yeah.
because I saw him in here. I thought he was in here, or maybe he's not in here. A friend of mine, so you guys had to write manual reporting, or do you have an application to help you with that?
I do not have an application for that. I do have a template for it,
Yeah.
but every report has to be unique, right? You have to give a different story for each client because each client has different applications, they have
Hmm.
different networks, different infrastructure. You don't really know what goes on with the client, but you have to write the report tailored to that client. So none of my reports are ever going to be the exact same. There's always going to be some form of uniqueness
Hmm.
surrounding the report, but you also want to make sure you stay consistent with some of the information that you give. I'll give you an example. Cross-site scripting, right? Let's say it's a stored cross-site scripting vulnerability. You already have the description for it. You list out what a cross-site scripting vulnerability is, why it's
Hmm.
impactful. Remediation steps, those should be the same because there's really not much to remediate besides, let's say doing, user input validation and things like that. So between remediation and description, I'd say those two are very valuable. But when it comes to the description, I always like to add a line or two discussing A, how I found it,
Hmm.
and B, why it impacts that specific business. Because that gives them the personal sense of, hey, this is why our business could be impacted. But it also helps me understand, okay, if I get this client again, I can go back to the report and be like, this is why it's impactful for the client. Here's how to reproduce the steps.
Hmm.
And I start to go down the chain of, hey, this is how to do it. So it not only tests their application for themselves in the sense that they can look at the screenshots and reproduce every single step,
Hmm.
but it also helps the tester who's going to be on the next engagement. Let's say it's the same application or it's the same, company doing the test. You can go back to the report and you can do the exact same steps to see if they properly remediated it. And if they didn't, you write it again on the report. It's almost like a freebie. It's a free vulnerability that you get to, put on. So, I would just recommend, in my opinion, get a program to do it for you. But I don't. I just use Microsoft Word and I pray for the best. So
And just
that's
convert it to a PDF.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably not the best way to do it, but it if you're efficient with it, there's no reason to fix it.
Yeah.
And
No, and because there's applications like PwnDoc and PlexTrack and like these kind of
mhm,
applications that help the process for those testers to be more efficient and just like, hey, like put this in and it's already in your, database and I can just go and, you know, finish my report a lot quicker because I don't really have to manually write much and you just spit it out and at the end of it and here we go. Now it's good to go.
right.
So yeah, those are the ones. I got this eyelash in my eye, but yeah, those are the talking points I wanted to talk about, like certification, OSCP, because since we've been on, we didn't really talk too much about that. I know you were taking it, now you got it, so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So anything that you want to share, anything on your mind? I have another, I have some more stuff on the talking points, but anything that you want to bring up um, on your that's on your mind that you like to chat about?
Cybersecurity is a really tough industry to get into right now. I
Hmm.
know Pat and I, we both spoke about this right before we started going live, and the job market is not there at the moment. If you're looking for a job, it's gonna be really tough and time consuming to get your foot into the door. The biggest issue I think is that companies are currently on a hiring freeze, at least in Q1 and a little bit of Q2, it seems. People always say that there's 2.5 million cybersecurity jobs, but where are they? Like, why are we not seeing all those cybersecurity jobs? So kind of gets me wondering what the deal is regarding that, statistic.
Hmm.
But keep going, do practical, make sure that keep your head up high because it's a tough field out there right now.
So, do you think it's tough, cybersecurity as a whole, or do you think like on the offensive security part, it's tough, but maybe there's more like blue team roles, more security engineering roles, because there's more need for those folks than pen testers? In my opinion, that's what I think. But what is your opinion on that?
I think that it's a little, I wouldn't say easier, but it's easier to get into the field if you're going into GRC and blue team, such as the SOC, just because those are entry level roles. Right now, you can be very advanced with it. Right, you can create crazy Splunk queries. I've seen
Yep.
people write
Like
insane
detection,
Splunk
Java
queries.
rules. Yep.
Right, so there are definitely advanced people, but the OffSec side of things, you have to do a lot with OffSec, right? There's a lot to OffSec that people don't really talk about. We say, yeah, this is pen testing, but think of it as a tree, right? Cybersecurity is just a huge tree with a bunch of different branches. So you got GRC, you got threat hunting, you have, digital forensics, you have whatever you could think of, but then
Mhm.
you have pen testing. With pen testing, you have all these different leaves, right? So you have car hacking, you have Wi-Fi hacking, you have web apps, APIs, mobile. I mean, should I continue, right?
Yeah.
And there's just a lot going on. So
Mhm.
unless you can figure out a specific niche that you want to go into for offensive security, holy good God. If you want to get into offensive security, you're going to essentially need to understand at least two of those niches. Now, for me, I picked networks as well as web application slash API. But for some people, they might want to do wireless and car hacking. It really depends. Or some people may even like physical. I know a buddy of mine who loves physical. He prefers physical over any other kind of pen testing.
Hmm.
Again, it really depends on what you want to do. But if I were to start over, and I tell people this all the time, if I were to start over, I'd probably be in a blue team role, simply because in order to be a better pen tester, a better red teamer, you're going to need to understand what logs are going through either a WAF or a SOC, getting an idea of what event codes are going through. Because if you want to become a better red teamer, you're going to need to know how to bypass those detections.
Yeah.
But if you want to be a better blue teamer, you may want to be a pen tester, because that way you can understand how the attacks work
Hmm.
and why they spawn those event codes. So everyone in cybersecurity, I like to refer them as a purple team. No matter what we do, we're both trying to help each other, right? On one hand, they're trying to defend us, but on the other hand, we're trying to find vulnerabilities to help secure the company. So they kind of go hand in hand. But I would definitely stick to GRC and blue team roles to start out.
Cool. Yeah. I always say the same thing, and I think same exact way, like understanding more of the blue team, and I just like it better, to be honest. But like it's definitely, and sometimes even like when I'm pen testing or doing a CTF or whatever it is, like sometimes it's like I still have that hat on. Yeah, it's cool, all the nitty gritty hacking, sacking, and stuff like that. But it's like, especially like last week's box, right? It was like Splunk. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be cool. You know what I mean? This would be cool. I can get into Splunk, but then my mind went to that. Like, even when I just did the Sal 1 exam, right, from Try Hack Me,
Track me. Yep.
and that I did a little review video on it, but like everyone's like, oh, this is super super easy, blah blah blah, and I'm like, if you never worked in a SOC, or if you never worked looking at logs, you're gonna be fucking lost. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
I agree.
you have to know Splunk, you have to know querying, you have to understand indexing. Like it's not like multiple choice and they give you can write false positive, true positive because it looks some crazy site and then you're done.
Mhm.
No, you have to actually write a report. You know what I mean? Like write your incident, write your case report, and like, okay, it's a true positive. Who was it? When did it happen? Who did it happen to? The whole shebang. And I think people don't realize that. I think people just go into that exam or into the world of cybersecurity, or
Mhm.
SOC or threat hunting or whatever, and they don't put in the effort of actually understanding what this alert is. But yeah, and after getting that, I'm like, man, this is pretty cool, because now it's like, okay, like, and that's why I want to do the CDSA as well from
Uh-huh.
Hack the Box, because I'm like, okay, like I wonder how that's going to be now, right? I heard it's a little different, but we'll see how that goes at Hack the Box and CDSA. I like the blue team stuff. It's always been cool for me. But cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Love that.
There's definitely less blue team certifications than offensive, certifications, at least from my perspective, right? You now have that new Try Hack Me box, you have the Hack the Box box, and then you have, what is it called? Like
Blue team level 1.
blueteamtraining.com, or
Yeah.
yeah, blue team level 1. But other than that, I mean, I don't really know of any other, blue team specific.
Hands
Um,
on, no, I did like the CYSA plus from CompTIA is more like
Content.
cybersecurity analyst. I think it's CYSA. I think it's cybersecurity analyst. Um, so, but hands on, and I never took the CYSA plus, so I don't know if there is any hands on with that. But normally, CompTIA is mostly multiple choice. So, but if anyone watching, or if anyone is ever thinking about getting into SOC, and maybe Try Hack Me's certification is not so like well known yet, because it's just like what, nearly a month old. Like, it gives you that validation that you can triage, right? And I seen people bash on it like it's so expensive, $300, but that $300 can get you a $60,000-$70,000 job, and that'll pay in a day. So don't look at the upfront cost with anything, even if it's something else. Like, we all look at that, fuck, $1,700, right? Like we were talking about OSCP.
Yeah.
but like, I'm not trying to like, sell this shit, but now we have $1,700. Fuck, we just paid on our credit card, our debit card, whatever. Now it's like we go and we do a pen test for $5,000 that week just because that company wanted to have an OSCP behind your name. Now you just made quadruple, right? So think about it like that. Just understand like everything you're doing is investing in yourself, right?
Mhm.
That's pretty much the way I.
Yeah, unfortunately, you go bankrupt for for taking certifications, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. Cybersecurity is all about continuous learning, and I can't really fault you know offensive security or sorry, OffSec now.
Yeah.
TCM security, right, for trying to make money off of courses and certifications because at the end of the day, we want to continue to learn, and that's the best way to learn is from our peers over at offensive security, TCM security, Hack the Box, TryAcme, INE security, all these different platforms. You and
Mhm.
I, MRE security and InfoSec Pat. Again, we do free resources though. We don't really charge much unless someone donates or wants to help the cause a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, you know, but yeah, it's a tough field, and that's all I'll say about that. It's a very tough field.
Yeah. So talking about like conferences, let's merge into like conferences. Have you gone to any? It is what, April now. Have you gone to any conferences yet this year? And you have anything cooking for 2025?
Yeah, so this was not publicly released yet, so I guess I'll say it now. MRE Security is partnering with B-Sides Harrisburg. So if you're in the Pennsylvania area or the Northeast area, I'll be there. We'll be doing a live podcast. It's gonna be super fun. But that's the first certification I'm going to since last year, which was also B-Sides Harrisburg. I've gone to DEF CON. I wasn't too impressed with DEF CON the first time that I've gone, that I went. I didn't really see too many people. I got to
Mhm.
meet John Hammond. I got to meet, Namsek. Got to meet a few other people. Other than that, though, I didn't really get to see many talks, and I was a bit disappointed in that. But I think that conferences are a fantastic way to network. I mean, you could find jobs just by networking with people at conferences. It's incredible what you could do if you can get your name out there. I'd say try to get a speaking gig at one of these conferences. If you have imposter syndrome, get up there and speak. I can't stress enough how important it is to network and put your name out there for this industry.
Yeah, no, facts. I remember, I'd done like little talks, little workshops at like little B-sides and stuff like that. And usually it's like in a little classroom, right? Because a lot of like here in the States, like B-side Tampa, B-side Orlando, it's always at a uni, like a college. So it's like
Right.
you're in like a little classroom or whatever. And then I went to B-side Romania. They put me on a fucking stage, like imposter syndrome, Mingya. Like they put me up there. I remember going and they called me, right? They're like, "Oh, you're up next." I'm like, "Oh, what room am I going in?" Because I thought like the main one was like for like the keynote speaker. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh no, you're going up there." And and I remember I was like KevTech or Kevin. I remember Kevin got super drunk. I don't know if Kevin's here today. I know he's working, but Kevin got super drunk the night before, and he was the first one. He was the first one on a Saturday morning to go up there to do his speech. And I'm like, dude, am I going up there? Like I thought he was because he was the first one to start the day and he was going up there. But
Hmm.
imposter syndrome, that shit was real. But like once you start talking, it I don't know. For me, it wore off because it's like I'm just talking about whatever my life and just talking shit for 30, 40 minutes or whatever it is. But yeah, usually like if you can get like little small talks, like little meetups, just to start talking in front of people, because talking to a camera is totally different than talking on a stage with people like live watching you. I think that'll be definitely a key to network, and they'll see what your capabilities are.
Right.
So I think that definitely conferences are definitely a good one. When did you go to DEF CON? How many years ago?
This was back when I was in university. I would say probably 4, I think. It
Okay,
was what was it? DEF CON 30. What are they on now? Are they on
33. This will be
34?
33 this year.
33? So
3 years
3
ago.
years ago.
Cool. Yeah, and for conferences, like last year, I went to Wild West Hackin' Fest. I think
Yeah.
that was way better than DEF CON, um, for multiple reasons. I think like Wild West Hackin' Fest was a good one to network because it's super, super intimate, and you're there because you really want to be there. I stick to that saying because that shit is out in the boonies. So, like if you're looking to, network with folks and be with, professionals that really want to, talk about some nerdy shit, Wild West Hack and Fest is definitely a good one too. I'm trying to make it to Black Hat and DEF CON this year. DEF CON's just cool just to like meet up with the friends and just hang out and shoot
Right.
the shit. That's what I go there for. I don't really give a fuck really about the talks, me honestly. And I'll probably help out in the Red Team Village again because I submitted to do that, to volunteer there. So yeah, it's always good to network at conferences. So that's a good thing.
Totally. Yeah. When I went to DEF CON, I wasn't 21. So I got kicked out of Caesars because I was on, the casino floor, and they were like, "Yeah, ID, please." And I was like, "Well, I'm hanging out with my friends. Everyone else is, everyone else is 21." But they did not like that, so I ended up getting booted from, from Caesars because of that. So that was interesting. And then, I just kind of walked around, saw a few people. It was super cool, and I don't know if things have changed. I know that they got booted from one of their conference spots and they moved over to a different hotel. But
Yeah, they're
yeah,
not in a hotel anymore. So that's another thing. Maybe you should come out this year. So they did it. They're going to do it in the same spot, which is the convention center, and it's really cool because it's all in one spot. And
okay,
that fucking that convention center is massive. So it's not like you have to go to one hotel and fucking find your way out and go to another spot for a different village. Everything's under one pane of glass. So I think that was super, super cool. Like, because my first year was 2 years ago. Like I had to go through the whole fucking mazes to get around,
right.
And then in last year they changed it to the convention center, and that shit's way better. So fuck me, like so much better.
It's expensive. I think what are the tickets now? 450 or something crazy like that?
I don't even know. I think over 500 now. If anyone knows, I haven't gotten my ticket yet, but it's over $500. And
I don't know, man.
yeah, if you don't have like a job to pay for it or whatever, it all depends. Obviously in your financial situation. Like I just if you can get your job to pay maybe for the ticket, and then you can just like room with get with a few friends, get an Airbnb, like, yo son, I'm gonna crash. That's what, like, two friends do that shit. They've been doing that for the last 2 years. Like, they drive from California and then just stay with me, crash on a couch or whatever, crash on the floor, bring a fucking sleeping bag, and like we just split that, or they just throw whatever they can at me, for the hotel.
Right.
So yeah, look, $590 cash and then $540 pre-registered. That shit went
Yeah,
up.
I
How
can't.
much was it last year? Like I think it was like
I don't know.
450, nearly
I don't
six hundred
know, but
dollars.
it's kind of getting outrageous. I don't. Yeah, I uh like you said, probably like Hack Space Con or WW. What is it?
Wild West
Wild
Hacking
West
Fest.
Hack and Fest. Those are probably better. Because I just can't put $600 into a conference.
Yeah,
It's not gonna happen. Local B-sides are definitely better.
yeah, yeah.
I would say, because you get to meet up with people who are living near you. Then you could have numerous, little conferences here and there, with those folks, which is super nice. So I would say try to go to, B-sides if you can. They're all over the place. I mean, like, I think just in the Northeast, there's like 15 or some crazy stuff like that. So
Mhm.
definitely check it out.
Yeah, cool. So I think so. We touched on certs. We touched on the job industry, pen testing. So I guess the last thing I have here is like CTFs, right? So do you do CTFs yourself, or like what is your take on CTFs? I don't know if we talked about this last time. If we did, sorry, I don't remember. But yeah,
Maybe it changed. I have no idea. I do CTFs. I have a team with my Discord, Republic of Hackers, and we just go on and have fun. We don't do it to win. We do it to learn.
yeah.
So one CTF that I was actually competitive in was the US Cyber Games. I was competing to be on the US Cyber team.
Mm,
And essentially what you have to do is you have to play all these different kinds of CTFs, you get nominated, and then from there you do go into something called the US Combine. And you go through about 8 to 12 weeks of CTF trainings with, professional CTF players, if you will. And from there, they'll choose the CTF, the cybersecurity team or the US cyber team. So I did not get chosen to be participating in the team, but I strongly recommend everyone to look at the US Cyber Games. Super fun. Pico CTF was also a ton of fun when it first launched this year, as well as the Apocalypse from Hack the Box. That was also
Yeah.
a ton of fun. But there's all these mini CTFs that you can also go on to. CTF Time is a fantastic resource. If you are bored one day and you want to go play a CTF, there's just a ton of CTFs on CTF Time.
Yeah. So, yeah, I want to ask you, and I want to ask everyone this. So, when I think of CTFs now is a little different because before, like CTFs was only a standalone box, right? I never did these challenges per se. Like,
Mhm.
so now I'm starting to realize when someone says a CTF, I think it's more of the challenges versus like the standalone machines. Is that
Yeah.
what you? So like, when I did the Apocalypse, whatever CTF, it was like all challenges, right? It was all like, you have your Pwn, you have your web app, you have your reverse, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But like when you have like, the season 7 for Hack the Box, it's like, oh, you have a standalone machine that you're hacking on Saturday with your mates, So is a CTF like a standalone machine or these challenges? Like what is it both or what? I don't know. I think it's more the challenges in my opinion, but
I've never heard you say mate before. That's pretty cool. I didn't know you were British. No. So CTFs. Whenever I hear the word CTF, I always think of I always think of challenges, right? So
yeah.
pawn, you have the binary exploitation, reverse engineering, web, crypto, all that
Hmm.
stuff. When I hear of track me, hack the box, or hacking boxes, I think of those kind of quote unquote CTFs. No matter what, you're still capturing the flag. It's
Hmm.
just a matter of what the challenge is. Is it? I call it, and I put this in my blog recently on Emory Security. I named it storyline CTFs and challenge CTFs.
Mm.
So storyline CTFs give you a storyline of what you're going to have to do to accomplish, the CTF. For instance, if you're on a box that is pickle Rick themed, right? You're going to
Yeah.
probably have to hack into a website and then you're going to have to move into the internal box, get root, and that's the end of the box. Whereas a challenge CTF is with all those different categories and you hack into each one. Some of them are Jeopardy based, which means Jeopardy is essentially as more people go about solving that specific challenge, the points decrease. So if you get more of the harder challenges, you're more likely to get more points than people who, don't really have that big of experience. So it really depends, but that's how I think of it: is storyline challenges versus, category challenges.
Nice. Yeah. Like I said, the stinger in the chat, like I did a lot of CTF, the boxes, like retired boxes when I was like just making little walkthroughs just to have content. But I never really got into the game of like, oh, let's be a hack the box master. You know what I mean? And never
Yeah.
until probably now, it's probably been 7 months now or 6 months, something like that. Since I've been like, okay, like
Been a
let's
while.
go at it and
Yeah.
checking this out and learning more and more. And not, yeah, when I do the challenges, those are more challenging for me than like, okay, like let's spin up a box, have an IP address, and go to town.
I agree.
Yeah, like the
Yeah,
boxes are a
it
lot
makes
easier.
you think,
Yeah.
and it gives you other perspectives of cybersecurity.
Mm.
I have never been good at binary exploitation. I actually don't like binary exploitation, but I started to learn a little bit about it because of these challenges that I was facing, specifically for the US Cyber Games. I
Hmm.
wanted to get good at it so I can make it onto the US Cyber team. Realized I was totally out of my league. There was no way in hell I was gonna be able to understand, pawn tools and stuff like that. But it gave me an option to at least learn it, or crypto, right? I was always good with web apps because that's kind of what I do for a living. But when it comes to crypto or, programming and stuff like that, definitely gives you something new to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. The Stinger loves these fucking CTFs. He's in it to win it. And kudos to everything he does with the team because he's on my team and so many other folks here like Paul's in the chat and I think I saw Jorgito and I just know them by their real name. I don't fucking do this whole thing. But
Username
we have
stuff.
about 10 minutes. So let's see if there's any um, questions. Let's see if there's any. I want to go all the way up. I didn't really pay attention too much because I think the people that are running OSCP are unstable. So that's this thing. He put this. I think the people running OSP are unstable, so I'm sure the box is. It's a waste of money, in my opinion. Yeah. Yeah. There is a lot of alternative that, that are a lot less. But, sometimes, the people that are in HR, they're the managers like, oh, like make sure they run through the ATS system. If they don't have OSCP, those acronyms on, patch them up, but they have every other one like CPTS, CBBH, CAPE, all the other shit that people
Right.
have that are way harder. But the person that's looking at the resume is probably not even understanding what the resume even means.
Happens with most recruiters
Yeah,
and HR people.
whatever the fuck they check. Yeah, I don't know what they check. Yeah, whatever the fuck they check. Maybe they check. Yeah, I think that's when I was like, when they run their little script, and what do
Yeah.
they check for? I don't know.
I don't know. At first, I was like, "This is malware," and the lady's like, "No, it's not." And then she was freaking out. I'm like, "Yes, it is. I'm revoking your access." She was like, "Do you want to take the exam or not?" I'm like, "No."
So is it like, because when I did it, like you had to have your camera on? Is it the same shit? Like,
Yes,
or
same
whatever the
stuff.
fucking person that did it with me, someone pretty much cloned their environment, because everything I had when I showed them like the report and everything, like the IPs were the same, host names were the same. So literally someone cloned their shit. But I don't know now. Remember, this was 7 years ago.
Yeah, I remember they made me take my camera off and they made, me go around the room essentially. Now I'm in an open basement, right? So when I turned my camera to show them the office next door to me, they were like, "Oh, well, you can't have the office there. You're gonna have to like close the door." I'm like, "My dad works there. Like, what are you talking? Like, I can't just like what are we talking about here?" So
Yeah.
they're like, "Well, you have to show us inside of the office." And I was like, "There's a computer in there." They're like, "Well, you got to turn the computer off." I'm like, "No." I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do, but I'm not turning the computer off. So I just didn't like their verification process. It was a little bit excessive. If I'm sitting here and you see me the entire time, I'm not going to do anything. So yeah, it was a bit rigorous, but we got it done. So
Yeah.
that was good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's $700 gone. Yeah, that is true. It was like $700, and I thought I was cool. I thought I got a good deal because everyone else was paying 1,200 or
Hmm.
1,400, whatever it was back then. And like I had access to the playground. I got it was, everything looked legit. I don't know. Whoever scammed me was good at. They had the system down. So I don't know. Maybe it's not going to fly now, but 7 years ago, 8 years ago, they got my ass. What did Andrew say? They do the developer job is it give you an exam first before you interview?
It's like a practical, it's a practical exam before you get hired, I
Mm-hmm.
think is what he's referring to.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah. So sometimes these companies will give you a public IP address and say, hey, like you have X amount of days to do this. And once, sometimes they'll give you a scope, or maybe they'll just give you one IP and say, hey, go to town, see what you can do, what you can come back with, write up a little report for us. And then maybe on the next interview, if you get far enough in that challenge, then you probably meet with the team and debrief, maybe do like a little mini debrief. And that's what I love about the PMPT. Like the PMPT gives you that full experience, right? From soup to nuts. You have
Right.
the external, you're getting it from the external, you're getting into the inside, you're compromising your X server, and then get into AD and blah blah blah, and then you write your pretty report, and then you sign up with your review, and you get on the camera, you talk to, which I think, I don't know, I'm not TCM, but if I had to put my camera on, you should fucking put yours on too. You know what I mean? Like I don't know
Yeah,
who the fuck you are. You know what I mean? Like who am I
I
talking to
agree.
on the other side? So, and I told them that too. And I was like, yo, like next time, like that would be my only complaint about that whole exam. Like, you expect me to fucking show you my ID? You show your ID. Fuck, you know? But
Are you really TCM? Like, are
yeah,
you really?
exactly.
Yeah.
After what
You
fuck happened
sure?
with OSCP, I don't even know who the fuck I'm talking to. But yeah, let's see. One other question from what's the stuff? All right, let's see this one. I don't know if you're still here. I have one
I'm here.
question. If someone, someone what to start in the level where I don't understand what the
Where to start in cybersecurity, I guess.
yeah.
Where to start? I just wrote a blog about this literally yesterday. I go through free resources of how to get into cybersecurity for free. You don't need a budget to get into cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that I would totally do, and again, it's in the blog, so you could totally read it. There's links and there's YouTube channels. Pat is in, is within the blog. Strongly recommend you check it out. It's basically a 4-step process. You're going to need to learn networking. Now I'm not talking about, people networking, right? I'm talking about technology networking. How does a computer communicate with the internet? After that, you're going to want to learn Linux. Linux is the standard operating system for cybersecurity. Next, you're going to need to learn a little bit about communication skills, right? What is the difference between technical and non-technical communication? How can you go about speaking to a C-suite who has no idea about what you're talking about technically to a and turn it into a non-technical, speech?
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing is hands-on practical experience, right? So using TryHackMe, Hack the Box, all these different kinds of CTF platforms, and starting to build out an online portfolio, I think is the best way to do it. I started out about 2 years ago. I started LinkedIn. I post twice a week for 52 weeks, landed me with about 9,000 followers, which I'm very grateful for, and then unfortunately I stopped, and now I'm starting it back up with, my company, MRE Security.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I think you should still get your name out there. So whatever you learn, post about it. People want to hear your experiences. People want to hear what you have to offer. If you don't, you're kind of behind most people who do.
Mm-hmm.
So if I apply to a job and you apply to a job, let's say we have the exact same certifications, but the only difference is I post every week about different topics related to cybersecurity and I show my interest to the community.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably the one that's going to get the job over you just because of that one factor. So if you have that, now the recruiter has to decide, or the manager, the hiring manager, whoever it is, has to decide, okay, who am I going to choose? Am I going to choose the one, let's say, with maybe a year or so of more experience, or do I want to give the newer person the upper hand or the advantage? So I strongly recommend building an online portfolio as well
Yeah,
throughout your
no,
journey.
facts. Yeah, no, most definitely. If a company, oh, this is what Glenn was saying. If a company overvalues one cert over another, there should be a small amount of company or getting kickbacks from the cert company. Maybe again, that's a good thing. Yeah, yeah, that is true. Maybe not getting hired is the best thing. Let's see, $1,700. Let's see what Andrew said. $1,700 is almost done in 3 months. Way more expensive if you do one one more time, like I would. Yeah, that's true. I don't like that new font. That new font is fucking me up. Reading it, it's like can't make out. I need to change that shit. Hello, boys. TCM has two blue. Oh yeah, that's true. TCM has two blue team practical certs, and I think Andrew did them both. Andrew, I don't know if you're still on. Did you do both of them? I know you did one, right? I think so. What's up, Paul? Oh, thank you, Glenn, for helping with my crack addiction. Green tea, fucking crack addiction. Let's see, John. Let's see what he put up here. I need to read it over here. I can't read this shit. This the internet stock specific certification has never been more popular. Yeah, the front runner. Yeah, absolutely. There is a few hands-on on CYSA. Okay, cool. I didn't have no idea because I haven't taken that exam. Hey, Andreas. Um,
Let's see.
conference network is a must. Yep. FedEx. You have to be 21 to gamble in Vegas. So yeah. Last year was 450 for the DEF CON, and now it's nearly $100. $100 difference.
Soon it'll be 1,000. Soon we may end up going to OffSec instead of that, instead of that conference. At this rate, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Like, yeah, like FedEx said, you can always volunteer. I know the Noob Village is looking for volunteers. Yeah, so I'm going to actually be there. I'm going to be doing a workshop with
Josh.
them over there.
Yeah, I think Josh Mason is the one that's
Yeah,
running that
Josh.
village.
Yep,
Yeah,
Josh is. Yep.
I'll be seeing if he needs some help with that in the near future.
Yeah, most definitely. Maybe that's how you can get out there.
Maybe. Who knows? Then I got to figure out hotel situation.
Yeah, we can talk about that. I think I was talking to a few friends like, hey man, like obviously it has to be a limit. Like do like an Airbnb because the conference is not on the strip, you know how it was before, so it's a little off the
Right.
strip. So you can get something pretty close by, maybe like Airbnb, and where the conference is, you can park there, which is cool. So
Hmm.
Paul, like I'm just saying this out loud, Paul, maybe we could do that, like fucking rent like a get a Airbnb and then rent a car for the week or whatever and split it between a couple people and you have a car for the week and then you have Airbnb which you could probably save $1,000 minimum for the week,
Right.
so that's
Or
actually an
more.
option too. I didn't even think of that
Yeah.
until just now, like renting a car since you can park there because it's a massive lot. So that's an option too. We'll talk about that with the team. Blah 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 blah. And shit, my whole thing went fucked up. My first valid verification took over 2 hours. Holy moly! I'm guessing that's with OffSec.
Yeah.
Played
That's what I
CTF starts tomorrow. Bam, thanks. Underscore boom, thanks. Uh, I guess Paul has something here. I want to read it over here. Do you have a go-to for blockchain and Web3 learning platforms
Oh,
recommendations?
no, I don't. If I find some, I'll be sure to share it, and yeah, I'll share it with Pat too, so he can post on his Discord. But I don't have any. Yeah, I don't have any specifically off the top of my head that I could think of.
Gotcha. I think all right, we only have a few more and then we'll wrap it up. I want to read it from
Cool.
here. So do you recommend CPTS first or any other certifications from either TCM, INE, or offensive security? Like which would you take? So definitely keep in mind pricing on the certs. I'll let you go.
Um, I'm trying to remember the price of CPTS. Is it
It's 200,
400?
$210.
Okay. But that doesn't include Academy. You need Academy too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You have to go through the
So
whole shebang.
let's say it's about 400 round. If you're a student, CPTS is the way to go because you get a discount by default. I think it's $8
Yep.
a month for Academy. So in that sense, if you have a .edu account, strongly encourage you to get CPTS. But if you don't, now TCM has turned heads a little bit with the price point, so it's now I think $30 a month. Uh, is it worth it? I really don't know. Half his course is already online for free. I don't really know if PMPT is really worth it in the training aspect, but just to get the certification, I think is also $400.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna get the training. I would not recommend it just because there's no reason to spend $30 a month just to take certification, the training for that certification, when half of it is already online and you can figure out the other half just by doing some simple Google, dorking, as well as doing some try hack me rooms.
Mm-hmm.
As far as INE is concerned, INE also fairly cheap, $400 for ECPBT, and EJPT is $200. Issue with them is that they require you to buy the full package, which means in order to get the certification training, you're going to need to drop $800 on just the training alone. That's excluding the ECPBT and the EJPT. So that's sold separately. If you want the combined total, it's about $1,200. So I would not recommend going down that pathway if you're tight on budget. However, with INE security, what you can do is during October, they have something called the BUGO sale, and it's basically half off, plus you get 2 certifications for free. So that's what I did when I first started out. I think I dropped $1,000. So it was 2 years of training and 2 certifications. And I ended up taking the ECPBT and the EWPTX from them. fantastic trainings. I have to say they're a little bit outdated, but they've started to update a lot of them, as well as their certifications. I have not taken the recent and new certifications. I was denied beta, unfortunately, but I have taken the EJPT V2. Strongly encourage you to take it. Very good certification. A little bit on the easy side, but over time, I think you can totally, you could totally do it without even taking the, without taking the training. Just do some basic try hack me rooms, and you'll be good to go. So that's a pretty easy certification you could take. But I would go, if we're going based on order of price, it would be CPTS, then INE, the EJPT, not the ECPBT, the EJPT, the PNPT from the TCM security, and then the OSCP.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with that. All right. Sounds good. So we're about 5 over. And yeah, man, I just want to say thank you. Thank for everyone from, the bottom of my heart for hanging out. And if someone, if someone wants to follow you, connect with you, and you do have your channel linked, so please subscribe to his channel as well. And if you want to go ahead, it's the same, right? MR,
Yeah,
MRE
MRE security everywhere.
Yeah.
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on YouTube, soon to be TikTok. But follow my personal as well. I love chatting with people.
Yeah.
So if Evan Isaac is the name, the first
Yeah.
person that should show up, I hope, unless my SEO got screwed. I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah, connect with me. Let's chat.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone. Have an awesome evening. And I will be live on Saturday doing some cool stuff. So check you out Saturday morning at 11 a.m. EST, doing some live hacking with another cool guest. And I'll see you guys there.